Dr. Daniel Goleman defines social intelligence as an awareness that refers to a spectrum that runs from instantaneously sensing another's inner state to understanding his or her feelings and thoughts, to understanding or getting complicated social situations. It also includes primal empathy, feeling with others, sensing nonverbal emotional signals, attunement, listening with full receptivity, attuning to a person, empathic accuracy, understanding another person's thoughts, feelings, and intentions, social cognition, knowing how the social world works. He also further states that you can define social intelligence by understanding synchrony, interacting smoothly at the nonverbal level, self-presentation, presenting ourselves effectively, influence, shaping the outcome of social interactions, and concern, caring about others' needs and acting accordingly. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's episode, we're going to be discussing overcoming setbacks, getting past fear. I mean, real fear. We're also going to be discussing playing through pain, working with real pain, physically and mentally. You'll clearly see in this episode that some coaches that my athletes have came across lack complete social and emotional intelligence to the point that they put their athletes in diabolical situations. So this is a real good episode. You're going to be hearing from my student athletes, and there's going to be a few parents on the line participating in this conversation today. So peace and blessings, and I hope y'all enjoy this. And once again, I want to thank y'all for listening. I want to thank everybody for all the support that they've been giving Sports Mastery. It's really encouraging us to go on and move forward and make this a better forum. And now, back to the show. Okay, so we're going to go on and get started, y'all. There's a few things we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss if anybody had some residuals on last week's episode discussing fear. And then the meat of what we'll be talking about today is making the most of setbacks. And we'll get back into the workbook on that. And then you guys are going to share some examples. I'll share some examples. And then after that, we're going to be discussing if anybody has any residual thoughts left on fear that in terms of what we discussed last week. And then the meat of our discussion today will be making the most of setbacks. So I'll give some particular stories of myself making the most of setbacks. And then I want to hear from y'all. And at the same time, we're going to get into the workbook. And then from there, we'll have a short video on discipline. And then we'll finish with successful habits. You know, how to create successful habits, and that'll be in the workbook. So I think I told y'all before that I repurposed these conversations and I put them out into the universe on the podcast. And what I've been getting a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback, and actually nothing but positive feedback because people are able to see inside of our program and they really appreciate how all of you guys are participating. So my goal is to run this series out. Our last meeting will be December 20th. So to record each episode, so we'll have a long list that we can refer back to over time. And I would encourage all of y'all to go back and listen to these episodes so you can hear yourself, but more importantly, hear some of the other guys that are speaking on what we're talking about and sharing their stories, because I really believe we're in a space that we can all learn from each other. And we're in a unique time where, for whatever reason, nobody wants to hear from the athlete. Nobody, the athlete is muted, and it doesn't matter who you are, So this is a place where you can share your opinions, and people could say right or wrong, but your truth is your truth. So I never want y'all to forget that. If you're feeling a certain way, that's your truth, and you have to have some place to where you can express that instead of holding it in. I don't believe in just training y'all as athletes and not getting to know you. That's foul to me. I'll never be that guy ever. I like to get to know my athletes, and their parents. But globally, some of us in the coaching community is just not the way it is. And it's just not cool. So this is a place and a forum where we're trying to create a culture and then preserve other cultures that are already in place to have communication with their athletes that are about mental toughness, that are about becoming stronger, whether it's mentally and physically, and being tremendous student athletes, on and off the field. In my personal opinion, some people could think I'm wrong, but I think everybody should play sports in middle school and high school. I really believe being an athlete is part of being a student, so y'all can think about that. But nevertheless, Kel, I know you had some residual thoughts on fear from last week. And what's on your mind?
Well, at Catlin, we do these assignments called recitations where we just have some sort of script or like poem or something that we will recite to our whole class, and we'll be graded on that. And that's something that always like brings a lot of stress and fear into our class. And so I had mine last week and I did really well on it. But beforehand, I was really nervous about it. And I decided to think about the session we had last time and think about why I was afraid and why I was stressed out. And once I did that, it really helped me calm that fear, because I realized what I was afraid of was messing up in front of my peers. Instead, I thought to be afraid of like trying to get a good grade and trying to do well on it instead of being afraid of failing. And it didn't completely just like remove that fear from me, but it really helped like push it down. And I think that helped me do better on the assignment. So I just think that already from seeing what we did last time, I can see a real world example where it has helped me.
I can appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. And that's part of it. Like I said before, when you're feeling a certain way, it's just being upfront with yourself and being able to define how you feel, and then once you can define how you feel emotionally and then think about and internalize where that may be coming from. Is it real? Does it really have a bearing on you? Is there a physical harm? Is there a threat to you? And then once you realize that it's not a physical harm, most things aren't that serious, you can move on past it. And like you said, you can kind of tamp that down a little bit and just go head on and work through it. Did you have anything else to speak on that?
No, that was pretty much it. Yeah.
Did anybody else have any residual thoughts that they wanted to share from last week's episode or conversation?
I got something, Deshaun. I just wanted to say thank you, because I connected last week's lesson and the week before that's lesson about not worrying about what your body's saying, but what your spirit is saying, and then also the fear part. And it actually really helped me last Friday, because I was kind of worried that I wasn't going to be able to perform at my top capacity because I was going to be afraid about what harm I could do to my wrist during the game. And then so I just thought about those things about fear, and then I was doing my affirmations just so that I could do my best in the game, and it actually helped me like go off. So thank you for that.
Yeah, who did y'all? Oh, y'all played Lincoln last week. God damn it, Gabe! Y'all supposed to win that one, man.
I know. I mean, I can only hold down the middle so much.
Right. I was, I thought something was different because I didn't get any text from James, and he's notorious for texting me.
Yeah.
So, I was worried about that. But nevertheless, as long as you played your heart out, that's what counts. And I find your situation interesting, because just think about like 5 weeks ago when you just knew nothing about like an a surgery coming up.
That's true.
You know what I mean? You weren't even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I'm glad you were able to get through that. How was your performance? How many tackles did you have?
I'm not sure. I think I had like 16, and it was only because there was a couple times where they just started. They would run like a fly sweep, and then I would go over to that side. Like, okay, so they'd run it like a fake one way, and I have to still get my gap because, you never know what way they're going to go. And I had to stay home and a lot of the times, and they'd try and run me away from the play. Yeah,
that's cool. So you had 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 16 tackles. That's good. That's real good. I can appreciate that. Now we're going to get into making the most of setbacks. And I remember playing indoor football, man, and I had this experience to where it's like when I played on a team in Billings, Montana. It was called the Billings Thunderbolts. And what they did was the season actually didn't start until March. So they invited everybody out for a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in January, and then Saturday was the game. So you practice 3 days and then you play the game, which was like the tryout. I had a pretty good game, half a field, 50 yards. In indoor, 6 carries for 42 yards. That's a good day rushing. And I caught 2 passes for like another 23 yards. So for all intents and purposes, for me, it was a good day. However, we didn't win the game. And part of that was because I made a mistake at the end, and we're running a 4th and 4. So I motion out of the backfield to the slot position, and I run the 6 yards, square in. The quarterback puts the ball on the money. Ball hits my hands, then ricochets off my shoulder pads into the defender's hands for a touchdown. Game over. Coach didn't want to bring me back. They were like, no, we're cool. But and y'all have heard me talk about my friend Leland before. So me and Leland had went out there together, and they love Leland. And so we fly back to Portland. They talk to Leland first. They're like, we want to bring you back, but we're kind of cool on your partner. So Leland is like, well, if he ain't coming, I ain't coming. And this is a true story. And he was like, we can work on that. And I'm living in, and some of y'all are familiar with Southeast Portland, Wimbledon Court Apartments over there off Holgate. I was living over there at the time, and they used to have this fitness center. They had a gym on one side and like this like aerobics room. So he would just throw me about 100 to 150 balls a day, where I would just run like many quick slants and hitches in there and really short seam routes, but just getting a lot of balls in. So they invite me back. I got into great shape, got my hands right. I go out there. They have supposedly at the time, this guy was all of 6'2", 235 pounds, and supposedly I know he played at West Virginia, and he was fresh out of school. And had allegedly it got cut from the 49ers. So they have him in. I'm about 200 pounds at the time. And then they have another back that's like 5'10", 180 pounds. And dude was a sprinter. Like he's a 10, 500 meter guy out of Sacramento State. So it was intense. But I remember, and some of y'all remember Marquise Royster when he was training with us for a little while, about 3 or 4 years ago. Well, his daddy was in the Oakland Raiders camp. And one thing I learned from him, he was like, when camp starts, it's about getting through camp and not being in the trainer's room or on the training table. So I just took pride in getting through them 2.5, 3 weeks of that true indoor football training camp. And I was number one. I was the starter on game day, and I started the first 4 games. So that was a particular setback that I overcame, and just, having a fear of dropping balls every time they were throwing to me. But I caught everything going back out there. So we get about to the 4th or 5th game, 30-hour bus ride to Dayton, Ohio. Again, I'm having a pretty good game. Get right down to the end of the game. They call a toss. I fumbled the ball. They get it. And I get hit at the same time, tweak my right knee, game over. I'm out for like 2 weeks. It might have been 3. So once I start feeling better again, it was like the backs were doing good. The guy from West Virginia, they ended up releasing him once I got to shine, and they kind of liked the other back too. So I started rehabbing, and there was a guy on our team who was actually a sprinter at Miami in college and started playing football later, and we got to doing a lot of track workouts together and just working out in the mornings, then going to the track and just doing a lot of sprint work. Come back 3 weeks later, have a pretty good game. It's average, but it was the games after that where it was literally 6 touchdown game, 5 touchdown game, 3 touchdown game. Against ex-Division I athletes. So that was a particular setback for me. From an academic standpoint, another setback that I had was after transferring from Portland State to Western Oregon, we were, I was living with these 2 guys. They were football players, right? So we're in a duplex. There's somebody else that lives on top of us. We're at the bottom. And we decided to have a party one night, and it was a pretty packed party. and we get into where it's getting to be about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. We're starting to shut it down. And these group of kids, at the time, they're college students. I'm telling them, the party's over. We're shutting it down. Everybody's leaving. Well, the guy, he basically cussed me out on the property that I was living in, and disrespected me, called me all kind of names. So I basically flipped out on him, took off on him and his partner, a physical altercation for all intents and purposes. And I remember getting hit in the face, and then later I found out it was with a bottle, and the girl that they were with hit me in the face with a bottle, and pretty much like nudged my front tooth. So I went in the house, called my partner. I'm like, bro, you got to get over here. I'm starting to feel a certain kind of way because my roommates were passed out at this time. It was just me, so I was really trying not to flip out by not picking up any silverware, if you know what I mean, because I'm feeling frightened at the time. And my friend, he's a good friend. He lives in Southern Cal now. He was a criminal justice major. He was like, D, shut the door, lock it. Trust me, the cops are coming, and don't answer it. Don't speak to them. If you open that door, you're going to jail and you're going to get kicked out of school. As long as you don't speak to them, you're fine. So I do just that. I tell, by this time, my roommates, they wake up. We was drinking, they was smoking, and just passed out. And finally, they woke up. So they had this like place where you could go down underneath the house. It wasn't a basement, but you just down on the dirt, right? So they do come, and they don't open the door because now my partner had came and he wouldn't let them because he understood law, because he was a criminal justice major. So they finally leave, relax, go to sleep, wake up the next morning. We have an eviction notice on our door, and we had to be out in 24 hours. Never heard of anything. This is what the police did. So I ended up literally packing up everything and moving back to Portland, and commuted from Portland to Monmouth, Oregon for about 3 weeks straight until I found another place. And what I did was I found a studio for like 2 to 3 months. After the month, or 3 weeks to a month, commuting back and forth to Portland every day, and I'm going to classes full time. Found a little studio, couple months. It was month to month, and then me and my man that came over and told me not to answer the door, we ended up getting an apartment together. But all of those kids, who brought this stuff to my house, they basically tried to get me kicked out of school and said, we're worried for our lives. This guy's a gang member. And what they didn't know was there was a lady that I had in one of my general science classes that worked in administration, and she, that was her job, and where the school was paying her because she worked there to get like her master's or something like that. So I sat by this woman every day, and I didn't know it at the time who she was. I just thought she was an older student, like 45 years old. She would talk about her kids in science class from time to time, and you can tell what you would call a non-traditional student. So she's like the mediation officer for this. So she listens to their story. She listens to mine. She's like, Deshaun, I know you. You go to class every day. This is ridiculous. Well, nevertheless, I ended up getting past that. Nothing ever happened. I didn't get kicked out of school, didn't lose any financial aid or academic scholarship money. So I stayed in school. It was just something I fought through at the time. And then, for a while, I was like, this guy, you probably shouldn't talk to him. That dude is kind of like dangerous. You know what I mean? It was really weird for like that whole year, So I stayed down there for 3 years and eventually graduated. But it was a social thing that I had to overcome. And, after a year later, it was gone. But, it was a tough experience. And I remember that to this day, so I'm glad everything worked out the way it did. But that was more of, there was a lot of different things that you could take away from that. But nevertheless, what I want to do is Gabe, we'll start with you. Do you have a particular situation where you've encountered something and you've overcame a setback?
There have been several injuries that I've had to come back from. I would say first there was a couple of times, but I never really had to come back though because I was always in it. It didn't matter. I'd play with the cast or something like that. This is just a different occasion. Yeah, other than that, I can't really think of anything. I mean, there's been times when I've been kind of deep in a rut for school, and I dig myself a little too deep, and then I come back. And I mean, I think that's the only thing I can think about academically is I'll come back and get a 4.0 or whatever.
What was the rut though? What when you say rut, what does that mean?
Well, sometimes during sports seasons, it can get very overwhelming depending on what you're doing. It was mostly wrestling season because wrestling season, it's like you got practice every night and then you got big old tournaments on the weekends, on Saturdays, and there's really like no time to get your work done. And so I just worked out a plan with the teachers instead of just conceding to getting a bad grade in that class. I worked out with the teachers. I was like, hey, so I would be able to come in before school at lunch. And could you work with me on these homework assignments? I don't have time to do them at home. So that worked out.
Okay. Kel, you're up. Let us know a particular time when you overcame a setback or encountered something difficult and was able to get through it.
Well, I can definitely relate to the school experience of kind of being behind on work and having to really come back from that. But I think the most memorable one for me is when I went to nationals when I was competitive in Taekwondo, and I got eliminated in the first or second round, even though I think I was a much better competitor then. And I basically had to spend the next whole year training 3-4 days a week or more, and then to come back. And I remember I don't know exactly how I did the next year, but I know I came in state. I got first in state, but I ended up beating some of the highest nationally ranked kids in state. They were actually ranked 1 and 2 nationally. Yeah.
Yeah, that sound like Jay. Is that Jay back there?
Yeah, there he is.
I don't think Kel remembers it as much as I do, but he was he trained his ass off and ended up going to nationals. And to your reading assignment this week, we don't want to just focus on, this is the reason why we lost or that kind of thing. And you have to really stay away from that because you can spiral into that kind of negativity or victimization. But the Kel lost in the first round to a kid who was just a slob of an athlete and shouldn't have been there. And after the tournament, the head of the referees for the U.S. national competition came to Kel and apologized and said that Kel had won that match. That said, it was soul crushing, for us to watch Kel have to go through that. And it was just shocking, and for Kel, but he buckled down, and then rather than giving up, it's sort of that, the next time I'm in this situation, I'm not going to leave it up to an ineffective or incompetent referee. You're going to go for the throat. You're going to knock this kid out. You're going to end the fight. And he ended up, two kids that took first and second place at nationals who were stellar Taekwondo athletes. They came to Portland to try and pick off an easy state championship, and Kel sent them home, and he took them out. And so it was a nice affirmation that don't quit. You can get mad at a shitty situation, but don't let that rule your life, and don't quit because of that. Come back, fight through it, and show your mettle, and the results came out, and so that to me was one of the kind of defining moments in Kel's athletic career.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jay. I don't know how much boxing y'all watch, but one of my favorite boxers and arguably the best defensive fighter of all time is Floyd Mayweather Jr.
Yeah.
But the last time he lost was in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And that pissed him off bad, and that was one of the things that still drives him to this day, to be almost impeccable at defense.
Mm-hmm.
Logan, tell us something about a setback or situation that you may have encountered and overcame.
Well, first thing that came to my mind was my wrestling season last year, where there's just a clear divide between a certain group of liked players on the team, and the coaches kind of had their own group, and there was a lot of kind of favoritism on the group. Even though I did wrestle varsity, it was still like you could see that there was coaches that didn't really care for me, and it's kind of like they had their own type of player pretty much, and they would pretty much it was like they'd draw straws to see who would have to room with me if we had to go to a hotel or something. And it was just kind of like I was the odd man out, and it kind of just like that was pretty much my whole wrestling season. But even with that, I went to state and made it to the third round, got kicked out by a guy. It was really memorable. But even with that, my last match in state, one of the head coach took all the other wrestlers and left when my match was there, even though everyone stayed for everyone else's matches.
Yeah, I remember going through that. And it's Candy by you, your mom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Yeah, and this is something that y'all don't know, and I know you, Gabe, being a tremendous wrestler, and you, Kel, in Taekwondo. Logan had a thing last year to where I guess the coach called himself teaching him tough love. I think that this is only his second year wrestling at the time, but he turns out to be a naturally good wrestler. But the coach basically choked him out in practice, trying to demonstrate a move and to be like physical, to be mentally tough. Yeah, it was that bad. Yeah, and that's some things that he literally had to work through. And from what I understand, to this day, that guy still has a job. And none of this is exaggerated. Candy, can you speak on that?
Well, I kind of have emotional attachment to it, so it's difficult to talk about it. But it was just an ugly racial situation, and the coach literally choked Logan out and said, intimidated him and was like, if you were to get in a street fight, are you going to lay there and die, or are you going to fight back? A full-grown man, right, to my 15-year-old child at the time, just trying to teach him to be tough at wrestling. So it just was that was the season, and that's how it went. So
it was like me and him were sparring, and he and he got me on my back to a place where I couldn't get off. So I was just like, all right, we're going to get up and start wrestling again from the top like we normally would. But instead he held me there, and I couldn't breathe because my hand was on my neck pretty much. And he was putting all of his weight on top of me because he was on top of me. And pretty much all I had to do was I was going, and I stopped. I know he could tell I could stop, because when you wrestle, you pretty much are aware of your opponent, and you know when your opponent has pretty much conceded to you. And he pretty much just stayed there until I had to almost
literally choking him out.
Yeah, to where I almost had to do or die kind of situation, use all my strength to get off my back so I could breathe again.
Yeah, that was a trip situation. And my hang up with that was okay, if you're going to demonstrate that, you should choke everybody out. But for whatever reason, it was just him.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is none of the other kids were treated that way. It was only Logan. No one was tough enough to wrestle him, so he had to wrestle the coaches, and then the coaches treated him like that. I wrote the school board about it. We had huge conferences, and literally the wrestling coaches, both of them, carried on throughout the season, and Logan had to either quit the wrestling season or continue to wrestle so that he could get what he was looking for out of the wrestling season, right?
Mm-hmm. And also,
go ahead.
And also, throughout the wrestling season, if I were to wrestle the coaches and kids were taking a break or watching, they'd yell out things like, "Don't choke him." like as a joke, and everyone would start laughing. It was really messed up.
Yeah, and he finished the season, so that's a cold story right there.
Deshaun, am I off mute?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can I add something to the comments here? Because there was a situation that was similar with Kel. Kel was a 10-year-old, and he was competing with a team that was going to be going to the national championships. And so my wife and I left, and we came back, and Kel was sort of sitting down off to the side crying, and we're like going, well, what the heck happened here? And it turned out that he was sparring an 18-year-old black belt, and we ended up seeing a video of this, and that 18-year-old black belt started charging him, and eventually was able to kind of get Kel to a point where he was able to kick Kel in the head. And that's a crime. You can't be an 18-year-old black belt kicking a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old in the head as hard as you can. And so what I wanted to say here, though, is that for the young man Logan and for Kel, you have to learn that when you are in a position of power, that you have to respect the people below you and teach them and train them and kind of like encourage them, not break their spirit, not scare them or humiliate them. And I think that's basically a sin if you're a coach to put a child or an athlete into a situation where they are subjected to humiliation or that level of fear.
Right.
And I think that from listening to Logan, he's the type of young man, and Kel, who are not going to treat the next person below them. They're going to help them.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Jay. It's like you really have to love the sport, not to quit at that point. Because most people would stop at that point. I don't love this enough to finish the season or keep going through it with this.
That's actually the thing I respect the most about Logan, is because I, of course, was 100% like, you're quitting, you're done. Like, the school's not going to do anything about it. The district's not going to do anything about it. Like, you're done. And he was like, so, like, I'm the one that has to pay the consequence. Like, I'm the one that, has to sit out. I'm the one that has to forfeit my wrestling season. Like, essentially, he was like, F them. Like, I'm going to get mine, And he had a great season.
Yeah, I still commend you, for sticking that through. I was in Las Vegas at the time. I know for a fact I would have been up there. I don't know how that would have ended, because I just don't agree with that with anybody. You know what I mean? And my friend, and I told y'all about my friend Leland, who's coaching, and I'm helping them with Cleveland youth. And for all intents and purposes, like, they were like 0-16 the last 2 seasons. They just finished the season 8-0, and these are just like all affluent, spoiled kids. But once they bought into discipline and proper instruction, where they're at now is phenomenal. They're 8-0 going into the playoffs. And like a few of those guys, you have there's 3 wrestlers on the team that carry the team, from O-line, D-line, in spirit, in skill players. And once the parents got out the way, it's been a tremendous learning environment, for everybody. And it just goes to show those kids see the love. They're getting, it's like, y'all just have to come out and see it sometime. It's just a beautiful thing when you can get people to buy in to basic fundamental sport and training for that. And nothing is sophisticated. And we've been starting to say this for a while, that really coaching is overrated. If a kid is good, his kid is good. But if you give somebody some love, you put some energy into them, and you get them to understand that and show them what discipline is, and show them how to overcome and overcome the many setbacks in practices and in games and things like that, it can be a beautiful thing. So these things that we're dealing with and discussing, Jay, like you had mentioned, I really, and this is what I like about where we're going with the show and the forum. is giving y'all a voice where I want to hear y'all's story. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're somebody listening to this right now, email me, tell me you want to be a part of this. Let me know if you want to share your story, because oftentimes you just hear about the coach saying this kid did that. He's a screw off. He made all these mistakes, but you don't hear why these things occurred and what was affecting them from an anxiety or like a depressive standpoint. You know, that's what I'm hearing from y'all. That's depressing. You know what I mean? We got some other athletes ain't here. That's all y'all been through some depressing situations. You know, even Charles. You know, same thing. You know, Charles got his friends. You know, they have a little party at school. Charles, tell us about that incident.
So basically, it's like one day after school, like people, like there's a party at my friend Hunter's house. And you know, like this is like, I think it was after open gym or something like that. And everyone was going over to Hunter's house. And I asked him a few days, before, like, can I go to your party? He's like, oh, I don't know. You know, it might be full. There's a lot of people coming. I'm like, okay. And I saw like some of my other friends there on the party on Snap on their story. I was like, whatever. So, you know, I haven't, you know, I don't know. I guess like not feeling included. I don't know. Like, I don't know. It looked kind of fun, but at the same time, like I was like, well, like I'm an athlete. And there's been, I think, 3 or 4 parties this week at people's houses. Like some of my friends have like big houses and they party. But I'm like, whatever, you know, like I'm an athlete, so just working on my game, and just maybe once in a while I'll go to a party or something, but like I'm just trying to stay focused and like try not to do all that, because sometimes at one party they're like bringing like, I don't, not drugs, but like I don't know what it was, but it wasn't good, so you know.
Alcohol.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I would say to you, Charles, in that situation, those aren't your friends anyway. And it's like we've been saying in this group, if you just be a friend to yourself and learn and love yourself, you know, you're going to attract the right people, you know, because the people in this group, we're your friends. That's why I encourage you to speak up and connect with people in the group. You know what I mean? So I can certainly understand that. And it's, you know, sometimes in life, you at some point, you got to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet and navigate the waters and speak up. You know what I mean? But you don't have to go to any parties. You could go to a party and get taken advantage of or bullied, you know. So definitely those aren't your friends. It's bigger and better things now. And this is a quote. I forgot what I was reading, but I don't know if they were in ancient times, but the quote was that when you're young, you should be working anyway. You work now. You don't even have time to play. So really, fuck partying.
Right.
It's just time to work and go to school. You want to know why, Charles?
Mm-hmm.
So you can play later. So let them play now. And they're going to be told what to do and frustrated later when they have to go to work, when they're frustrated at the corporate cubicle or wherever they end up at, or on a goddamn, excuse my language, assembly line. So I'm telling you, y'all work now. Do the work now so you can play later. You got anything?
Something to add?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, some like kind of a similar situation was that a few of our star athletes, 3 seniors and 2 sophomores, this morning at 10 o'clock decided to go out into the parking lot during a school day and started drinking booze and vaping and got caught by the cops. So we're out about 3 starters right now. So that's for our first playoff game. They're all seniors, and Coach Swain, our head coach, pretty much just said, I'm glad they got caught because they need to learn that that's not the thing to do, and their last memory of they're done for the season because they decided to go do something stupid in the parking lot.
Yeah. For the sake of conversations, what numbers are they?
Stop it.
They'll leave it alone. Tell me later.
I got you. I got you. Just that's a.
We'll call you later. We'll call you later.
Yeah. Hey, go ahead, Gabe.
I just had something to add too. So, in my opinion, I think if you have a goal for yourself, then you don't got time for partying. And your real friends are the ones who understand that. Like, I know my most valuable friendships that I've had in high school so far have been the people who understand that and who are like, hey, I mean, I'll get in the workout with you. You want to go throw tomorrow morning or whatever? You know, because if you're partying, then you're missing that night and then you're missing the morning after. And you just got to think of it that way, not think of it as a time to take a break, you know, because if you have a goal, then you don't got time to take breaks.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, goals, because that might be the topic for next week. You know, that's really good, Gabe. So, Jonah, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, explain to us a time where you've had to overcome a setback.
Okay, so going off to last year, from my pre-K to like halfway through my 7th grade year, I've been like in a public school, so I wasn't able to really do my work. So I was always distracted, like trying to make friends and stuff. And then toward the ending of my 7th grade year, I went to a private school. So from the ending of my 7th to my 8th grade year, I've been going to a private school. And my grade, well, I was trying to play sports, but the major thing that was really setting me back was my grades, because I wasn't so used to doing homework. I was always used to talking and like not really getting in trouble, but always getting talked to every now and then. And I was like, the grades is what really brought me back as far as me playing sports. And then going on to last year, since I was still getting used to, you know, how to manage my time and stuff like that, my grades were a big factor, because without grades, I couldn't play sports. And so I was always trying to make friends rather than do my work. But this year, it's a complete turnaround. I'm over here. I'm able to get my work done and make sure I'm on top of my grades rather than on top of sports. But, you know, they still go hand in hand, but I care more about academics rather than sports at this moment. So that's one thing. And then probably a second one is probably like when I had my knee injury, you know, when I was, you know, I was still trying to do extra stuff when I really shouldn't have, because the more pressure I put on my knee at that time when I had my surgery, it just put me more back, like farther back, because that would just create another injury on top of another injury, which is something I didn't want to happen. So
what changed?
As far as last year to this year, what really changed is pretty much my mindset. Over the summer, I, you know, took a deep breath and I started writing down the stuff like, what are my goals in life and how am I going to like be able to achieve that? And so one of my goals now is to graduate with a 4.0 and become an all-American athlete, which is something I'm on now, because I'm currently at a 3.4. And so I'm just trying to, you know, maintain that. So when my senior year comes, grades aren't going to be hard, because I'm already so used to being able to how to manage my time. And on top of that, I'll get extra work in for football. So that can go hand in hand.
You know, Ronan, I want you to tell us, you know, give us a scenario where you've overcame a setback or some type of obstacle.
Well, I think one of my bigger ones was when I hurt my knee, because that's something that lasted 2 whole seasons up until the very beginning of my sophomore season as well. And for that, because whenever I wouldn't really do anything, I didn't really help myself heal at all. I just kind of let it heal itself. And every time the 2 years that I went back out for football, I would just start working and it wasn't getting any better. And then I'd be back at square one and out for the season. To overcome that, what I had to do was, actually start, doing my PT stuff, getting that in and taking care of not just my knee, but my body more as well.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. We're going to go to the workbook, y'all, and I'm going to do the screen share. So bear with me for a second here. Go ahead and read that page, Gabe.
Okay. It says, if you don't like your outcomes.
No, start at the top. Start at the top.
Sports mastery, successful habits formula. If you don't like your outcomes, change your responses. 3 steps to take in response.
Actually, hold on, Gabe. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I want you to start at read that now. Start.
Okay. Sports mastery, make the most of setbacks. Event plus response equals outcome. The basic idea is that every outcome you experience in life, whether it is success or failure, wealth or poverty, health or illness, intimacy or estrangement, joy or frustration, it is the result of how you have responded to an earlier event or events in your life.
Keep going.
Okay. If you don't like the outcomes you're currently getting, there are 2 basic choices you can make.
Okay, there's 2. I want you to start reading number 1, and then once we get to number 2, I'll have Logan read number 2. So go ahead.
All right. You can blame the event for your lack of results. In other words, you can blame the referee, the weather, a teammate, your parents, the coaching staff, racism, gender bias, the lack of support, the political climate, the system, and so on. If you're a golfer, you probably even blamed it on the clubs or the course.
Go ahead. The course you played on.
Okay, or the course you played on. No doubt, all these factors do exist, but if they were the deciding factor, nobody would ever succeed. Lots of people overcome these so-called limiting factors, so it can't be the limiting factors that limit you. It is not the external conditions and circumstances that stop you. It is you. We stop ourselves. We think limiting thoughts and engage in self-defeating behaviors. We defend our destructive habits, such as drinking and recreational drugs, with indefensible logic. We ignore useful feedback, fail to continuously educate ourselves, and we learn new skills. Waste time on trivial aspects of our lives, engage in idle gossip,
engage in idle gossip.
Engage in idle gossip, eat unhealthy food, fail to train, fail to study, avoid necessary conflict, fail to tell the truth, and then wonder why our lives don't work. But this, by the way, is what most people do. They place the blame for everything that isn't in the way they want it on outside events and circumstances. They have an excuse for everything.
Okay. Logan, go ahead and read number 2.
You can instead simply change your responses to the events, the way things are until you get your outcomes you want. You can change your thinking, change your communication, change the pictures you hold in your head, your images of yourself and the world, and you can change your behavior, the things you do. This is all you really have control over anyway. Unfortunately, most of us are so run by our habits that we never change our behavior. We get stuck in our conditioned responses. We are a bundle of conditioned reflexes that operate outside of our control. You have to regain control of your thoughts, your images, your dreams, and daydreams, and your behavior. Everything you think, say, and do needs to become, one second, the thing's blocking, become intentional and aligned with your purpose, your values, and your goals.
Yeah. So what I want to, if you're listening to this, if you're a sports parent or coach, and you just heard one of our fellow athletes, Logan, discussing like the images that you have of yourself, the pictures you hold in your head, how you communicate with yourself, the way you think. I need y'all to go back and listen to, I want to say it was episode 113, What is a Superstar? Because we kind of addressed those things in that episode. And last week's episode, of course, what is fear? So these are some things that can help all of y'all. Before we close out, I'm going to share this video with y'all on discipline. So bear with me. Gabe, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna find this video.
Hey, while he's finding the video, make sure y'all have a notebook and pencil so you can take notes.
Yes. So I'm going to start this video right now on discipline. Here we go.
Having discipline is everything. I had the first game of the season on the 4th and 4 at the end of the game, 50 seconds left. Star receivers covered. Ball comes to me. 4th and 4, I run a 6-yard crossing route. I look up, not expecting the ball. The ball's about 4 feet away from me. And you know what happened? It hit my hands, ricocheted off my shoulder pads, and landed into the hands of the opposing team. Game over. The coach wanted to cut me. The offensive coordinator wanted to cut me. I was able to stay. However, 2 games later, I had another fumble out in Dayton, Ohio. Costed us the game. You know, I had caught a knee injury on the play. They kept me around, brought a couple new guys in. I was on injury reserve for almost a month. During that time, I had to do some serious soul searching. Some of the things that I did was I lived in the training room as far as getting ice, getting heat, getting the stem treatment, getting all the body, the manual manipulations, you know, on, around, and underneath my knee to get healthy. From that point on, I started training in the morning and after practice to get my body a lot stronger. And part of that soul searching was gaining my confidence and overcoming self-doubt. And a lot of what I had to do is study film. I started studying film 2 hours every day. That was the protocol for myself. That's what I had to go through because I was going through something planned. You know, professional indoor football, you're on a contract, you're getting paid to play. They don't like losing. It's people coming in every single day. So what I did was I took the rehab series. I started training. I took my personal training to a new level, training outside of the team. And I did a lot of film study. I saw my confidence just started to come up in practice. I started to have some of my best practices being out there. And that led to me having a 14 touchdown tear in 3 games. For one game, I scored 3 touchdowns. The next game, I scored 6 touchdowns. And the game after that, I scored 5 touchdowns. But I credit all of that to increasing my discipline, not to do to do more physical work, to do the mental rehearsals, and then also to watch film. The D is for discipline. Are you disciplined to do the physical work day in and day out? You have to be disciplined to do your strength and conditioning work. You have to be disciplined to do your skills training. You have to be disciplined to show up to your practices. Are you arriving 30 to 45 minutes before practice? Are you staying half an hour after every practice to work on those small details? That is the discipline that I'm talking about that's going to help get you to the next level. It is the same in the classroom. Are you forming study groups? Are you reaching out to the instructor to ask questions to get help when you need help the most, especially when you don't understand certain subjects? Are you willing to work with a tutor? See, most 4.0 students, they work with tutors. They don't feel like they're somebody's making them feel dumb, ignorant, or stupid. The tutors are there to help you. The tutors give you an edge. It's the same as a coach. The tutor is the same as a personal trainer. It's just on the academic side. So you have to have discipline for these things when it comes to mindset. You have to do the physical work. But you have to be able to handle the day-to-day tedium. Because it's going to feel boring. You're going to ask yourself, why am I doing this? You have to know your why, because if you have your why, that is going to keep you disciplined to show up day in and day out to do the physical work, whether you're lifting heavy weight, whether you're doing lightweight, whether you're doing your sprint work, your speed, agility, quickness training, whether you're working with a skills coach. You have to be disciplined to show up day in and day out. But if you don't have a why, that discipline, it's going to wane, and it will wane fast. So there's a discipline to a lot of this. There's a discipline to doing the physical work. I need you to be disciplined to do your mental rehearsals. Are you going through the game in your head? Are you going through a practice in your head? Can you see can you see it? Can you smell it? Can you hear the practice? Can you see the game? Can you hear the game? Do you know where everybody is in space and time? This is the discipline that I'm talking about when it comes to mental rehearsals. Are you studying film? Did you watch 10 hours of film this week? This is what I'm talking about in terms of having the everyday edge. This is discipline. Now, on the flip side of this, are you being disciplined enough to rest? Are you getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep day in and day out? Are you turning off the computer at night? Are you off of your phone at night? Did you put the texting up? Did you put the emailing up? Did you put the MacBook up? Did you put your PC up? This is what I'm talking about when it comes to discipline. And as you can see before, a lot of this is related. It rolls from one aspect to another when I talked about the overarching theme of this project, and then later we discussed effective action. Now we're discussing discipline, and you can see how some of these concepts and strategies overlap. So you have to be disciplined to do the physical activity, but on the other end, you have to be disciplined enough to rest.
Okay, hold on, y'all. Can you hear me?
Got you.
All right. Hold on. Let me stop the share.
I can hear you.
Okay. Logan, before we close out, I want to hear from each of y'all real quick on what y'all got out of the video and how it relates to what we were discussing earlier in terms of having discipline to overcome setbacks.
Well, really, I can kind of tie this into my personal story I shared earlier. Is just you got to really focus on your own goals and have enough discipline to not like stray from the path that you know you should be on and you want to be on. And you just need to have enough discipline to clearly see your goal and overcome the challenges and pretty much just strive to be the best you can, pretty much.
Okay, Ronan, what was your thoughts on the video and as it relates to today's conversations and topics?
It's kind of going off what Logan said, but just, having the discipline to keep going even when you might have a bunch of setbacks, but just having your why to keep going and knowing your why to push yourself to work harder.
Okay, Jonah, what's your thoughts? Your final thoughts?
It wasn't really, well, from what I got from the video was like you were still being active while you were inactive. What I mean by that is, although you were unable to like play because of, I believe it was like a your knee incident or something.
Yeah, knee injury.
Yeah, knee injury. You were still, in the weight room and you were still like getting iced up and you were still watching film. So you were still being somewhat active without really putting your pads on. And that just shows that you're determined and you're able to do whatever you can in order to still be a part of the team.
Yeah. What was your thoughts, Gabe, on that video?
I think everything you talked about can stem from the what's your why, and I think that's so valuable because it'll help you on those mornings when you get up and everything hurts and you don't want to go to the gym, but you think of your why. Like it could be like, I want to be the best player in the state, and then that'll get you through those hard times. And I think that can work with anything. You were talking about recovery and how recovery and watching film, that's what's going to get you to the top. It's not, it can be getting in the weight room more, but it's going to be those things that most guys aren't doing.
Yes, most definitely. Kel, what did you think of the video in relationship to our conversation today?
Well, I think one of the most important things you said in that was the discipline. You have to have enough discipline to know when to rest and recover. And I think I can relate this to me. A recent setback I had was my ankle injury. And after, it was about a 6 to 8 week process. And after about 2 weeks or 3 weeks of being injured, all I wanted to do was run. And I couldn't. I just had to stay walking. And I think that's something really important, that I was disciplined enough to rest and wait the whole 2 months. And that's why I'm able to do what I can now.
Yeah, I agree. You have to let yourself recover, because if you don't, you're going to keep re-aggravating the injury. Is there anybody that I'm missing? Yeah, Charles, what did you think of the video today?
It really helped me. Like I took notes and I said more than this, but the things that are really important to me is like to know your why and like the discipline to work hard and like be consistent. Because like kind of like what you guys said, like like going in the weight room and working out even when you don't want to, but then you stop for a moment and you think, why am I doing this? Like, and you could just say, oh, I want to be best player in the state, best player in the nation, whatever it is. And then, like you get by it. And, you're thinking about why you doing this, and what you want to become and how far you want to go. And this really makes you, motivates you to do the best you can do and work hard. And like if you're sore, you don't want to do it, just push yourself, because at the end, it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah, and definitely for you, man, one thing I'll say is that, you mentioned the party thing earlier. You got to know your why when those parties comes, and you can say, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to this. I don't care if I'm invited or not. You know what I mean? And I do encourage y'all to have fun socially, but you have to be responsible. You can't be around drugs and alcohol or police getting called to parties and things like that. I've been there. I've done it all, and it doesn't get you anywhere. It gets you harmed socially and academically. Candy, did you have anything to add before we close out?
No, thanks.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, hey, Deshaun, I'd like to kind of close out. You specific to the discussion about parties and the like, and this is kind of beyond, I think, what we were talking about today, but I think it's so relevant to young men, especially athletes, and athletes are going to end up in college and end up at parties and or in different environments or situations. And this past weekend, Kel had a party. And he, by just kind of, I think, coincidence, invited 15 girls and 14 boys. And so it was an even split. And he texted all of his friends, hey, I'm having a party this Saturday, come on over. My wife and I thought it would be a good idea to send out a message, an email to all the parents to kind of explain the details, and one, that we would be supervising the party. Two, we were pulling all of the alcohol out of the areas where the kids could have access to it, and that basically that the party would be supervised.
Yes.
What was interesting and actually sobering to me is that out of those 58 parents that we reached out to, no parents of any boys called up or asked us any additional questions or said, hey, thanks for the information. We're really happy to know that there's going to be supervision there. 100% of the girls that were invited to the party, every parent reached out to us to ask additional questions. They wanted to know, and they were thankful that there was going to be supervision. They were thankful to know the address, they're thankful to know the situation was in there. And to me, what was sobering about it is, and I hope the boys here, the young men here, understand what parents of daughters and what girls go through when they put themselves in a situation where they could be around other students, or where alcohol or drugs are involved. And so, again, I was just sobered by it to see how concerned every parent of a daughter was, and that's just sort of a comment on our society and a comment of things that we've seen lately. But also, I'm just hoping that I can, express the need for these kids that are in this session tonight to understand their responsibility of being leaders on the field, but leaders in the classroom and leaders in society and in various environments and situations like that.
Jay, I was telling the kids earlier that I have a new mic coming because this thing has been glitching. I thought it would arrive today, but it'll be here tomorrow, nevertheless. But I'll just be frank and take what you said a step further, because I've told my kids, and this is nothing against females, but I'm talking about the young men here, and I've told this to my college athletes. When you're at a party, you see the girl drinking or with 2 cups in her hand, you need to get the hell on. and get out of there, because you don't have time to be a part or just interrogated about any date rape situation, whether you were involved directly or indirectly. Because you as an athlete, just to be questioned or be a part of something like that, it's a wrap. You cannot recover from that. Whether you were,
Deshaun,
yes,
you need to make your presence known when you are leaving, and you need to have some sort of record of your own, like, I am now officially announcing that I'm departing this party, and then you go somewhere else and you have a record of you being somewhere else.
I like that. That's high powered. I really can appreciate that, Jay. And Jay, before we close out, so what did you get? I mean, I find it intriguing, just like you said, the parents of all the girls called, but why? What's the message? What do you read from that? What do you take out of that the parents of the young men didn't call you?
Well, partly it might be because Kel has, established relationships and they've been over here already before, and so maybe there's a more familiarity. But I also think that it's that you have a daughter, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old girl, and all of a sudden on a Saturday night, they're going to someone's house. And, unfortunately, girls are so much more often victimized. And so I think parents, unfortunately, have to be so much more concerned about that victimization, or about sexual harassment or sexual assault. And so that's why I think all the parents of the girls were checking in, and all very and highly appreciative that we communicated with them and we shared. And so I think it really relieved all of their concerns about allowing their daughters to go out and go to a party. So I think it's a sad state of affairs, but it is what it is. And so, again, I think we need to understand where they're coming from, and we need to understand, again, as young men, that we need to make sure that, one, you definitely need to get out of a situation. If you're at a frat party and stuff is going down, you need to get out. But you also need to try to stand up and just say, this isn't right, and make sure that something, that the people that have the potential to victimize somebody aren't allowed to do that.
Yes, and I'll add on to like what Jay said earlier. When you leave, document it. Let people know when you're leaving, and when you get to that next destination, document that there. I really believe that, like, this is good. This episode got really, really good, and I can really appreciate everybody participating. And again, if you're listening to this, sports parents out there, this is a forum. This is about preserving a culture or changing a culture. It is for the sports parent of the student athlete to participate, or like I said before, I really believe that being an athlete is a part of being a student. But when you are an athlete, you're held to a higher standard. You have more responsibilities, and you have to live up to that outside of sport. Today's episode is brought to you by Bay Area company Millennium Edge Apparel, an athletic apparel company that manufactures clothing for basketball, golf, soccer, regular workouts, and even restaurant staff members. To learn more, visit millenniumedgeapparel.com.